Hello and welcome back to Feel Real Depth. As I stated at the end of part 1, I forgot whilst filming that this was going to be a two-parter, so here's my quick little intro, but we don't need to say too much. We saw at the end that Jenny right now is living her hell on earth, and with that, let's get back into the story. So, as time goes on, Forrest on the other hand is doing extremely well. His boat was the sole survivor after a terrible storm, so he and Lieutenant Dan end up incredibly successful in the shrimping business. He's brought back home after his mother's sickness and ultimate passing, but her acceptance with death makes this process as peaceful as it could be. Forrest decides to stay in Alabama, leaving the hands-on shrimping to Lieutenant Dan, who also helps him out with some investments, getting shares in none other than Apple. So at this point, Forrest is quite literally drowning in money, and decides to share his overflow with the community. He gives money to church, donates money for a local healthcare facility, and gives Bubba's family his share from the business. And with that, blessing Bubba's mother to never have to work again. This is such a great testament to Forrest's upbringing and just how well he stayed grounded through all this quickly accumulated wealth. Because don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with liking the more expensive and flashy things of life. If that's your thing, that's your thing. And there's plenty well-off people that still donate to communities. It's just always a beautiful sight to see when someone can garner so much money, choose to share so much of it, and not let it define or shape them. Because let's be real, he is now incredibly wealthy, but he is still that same pure-hearted Forrest Gump. The same one that met Benjamin Blue on that bus and promised to go into business with him. The same Forrest that kept going back into an active war zone looking for his friend, saving several lives, and eventually holding his dying friend in his arms. And still going on to fulfill that promise, creating a business in his friend's honor and giving Bubba's family his share. Not to mention now being in a position where he never really needs to work again, and yet is still volunteering for the community. There's a quote coined by Henry Ford that money doesn't change men. It just unmasks them. And as I was looking for that exact quote and who it was coined by, I came across another. It reads, "Money doesn't change people. It reveals who you are when you no longer have to be nice." Simply put, it doesn't change you, it amplifies who you are at your core. Now, of course, there are certain levels of nuance depending on the exact situation, but overall, I feel like those quotes stick. If you're an asshole without money, you'll probably be an asshole with it. So, his mother has passed, the boarding house business coming to rest with her, and Forrest is now living in the family home, alone. And being in that big old house by himself, he can't help but to think of Jenny and wonder where she is. And well, one day, as Forrest is cutting the grass on his family land, Jenny appears. The two reunite once again, greeting and hugging each other. Forrest guesses that maybe she returned because she had nowhere else to go, and I'm sure that's somewhat true. He also takes notice of how much she sleeps during the day, which yeah, I can speak from personal experience on this one. When you're in a period of running on straight survival mode for a considerable amount of time, and you finally find yourself in a place where you can just be, oh, your body is catching up on so much greatly needed resting. And I'm talking good resting, because we all know there's a difference between getting some sleep and getting a good night's sleep. And when you're running on straight survival mode, there are days you wake up and feel like you never even went to sleep. So Jenny needing that rest makes so much sense. The two spend some time catching up, going on walks, and Forrest mentions how majority of the time he's doing most of the talking, highlighting that Jenny may not really want to talk about how she's been these past few years. And I mean, rightfully so, considering the hell she's been through. Yeah, she may have recognized that she wanted a safe space to recover from hell, finding her way back to the safest person she knows, but she's not quite ready to look back at all she just went through. She's gonna need some time. The two are out walking one day when they stumble across Jenny's childhood home. Jenny tenses up almost immediately, staring hard and ever so slightly shaking her head as she stares upon the now abandoned house. Forrest walks to catch up to her when she suddenly has an outburst, throwing her shoes at the house. She reaches to the ground, picking up rocks to throw, and hits one of the already partially broken windows.
Forrest just looks on as she continues to throw rocks and mumbles to herself, "How could you do those things?" Until she eventually falls over, sitting and crying in front of the place where her deepest pain started. Forrest approaches her, slowly sits down, and never says a word, though we can hear him narrate,
"Sometimes I guess there just aren't enough rocks."
When we as people are in our deepest moments or even just memories of pain, sometimes there are no words to be said. I had to learn this myself from both ends of the spectrum. Just the presence and comfort, hug, or warmth of another is sometimes just enough in those moments. This is easily one of the most raw and heaviest moments in the film. Up until this point, I don't think Forrest has ever quite fully understood what Jenny went through in this home. I mean, even now, sitting at the bus stop, he's still describing Jenny's father as a very loving man in the way that he interacted with his daughters. So it's safe to say he still doesn't understand the that Jenny went through, and probably never will. But what he does know is that even as kids, his friend didn't like her house, so much so that she prayed to leave it, and eventually did. So he's able to just sit with her in this moment. He realizes that her time here must have been much more painful than he ever fully recognized, given his statement. Because yeah, sometimes there are never enough rocks, never enough tears, never enough anything to convey just how much pain we humans have endured, especially pain linked to our upbringings. Phenomenal scene, and his line at the end is so spot on. Nevertheless, as Jenny continues to stay with Forrest, they create some beautiful memories together, spending time and expressing their love in different ways. Forrest picks flowers for Jenny every single day and places them in her room, and Jenny gifts Forrest some running shoes. The two have fun dancing, spending time in nature, and just enjoying each other's presence. So much so that Forrest declares this the happiest time of his life. And this is the second time he has said this, both times, including Jenny. One night, the two are up watching 4th of July fireworks on TV, and Forrest decides it's time to ask Jenny a serious question. She's making her way to bed when Forrest just outright asks Jenny to marry him, making sure to insert that he would make a good husband. She responds that he would, but Forrest can sense her hesitation to the question, and we see why when she tells Forrest that he doesn't want to marry her. He seems confused by this response, and once again just outright asks, "Why don't you love me?" Followed up by, "I may not be a smart man, but I know what love is." Forrest then exits the foyer, leaving to stand on the porch and process their short-lived conversation. It has to be noted that this is one of, if not the first time, we see Forrest visibly upset with Jenny and Jenny alone. He's not a young man still figuring himself out. Not that I think you ever have it all figured out, but this is a man that has gone through the world and has developed a pretty solid sense of self. Forrest knows on paper he's not the smartest man to have walked the earth, but he knows that he's a man that has been picked on his entire life and still has a wide open heart, and he will no longer allow Jenny to tell him that he doesn't understand what love is. That night, as Forrest is laying in the bed they innocently shared as children, Jenny comes in and lays on top of him. She tells Forrest that she does love him and proceeds to kiss him, which leads to them making out, leading to them making love. Now, unfortunately, the very next shot is of Jenny swiftly exiting the house and making her way towards a pre-ordered taxi. She's moving in such a rush pace that even the driver asks where she's running off to which she replies, "I'm not running." Forrest is still asleep in bed, the slightest smile on his face, unaware that Jenny is on the run once again. When he awakes, the air in the house is mournfully quiet as it sinks in that Jenny has left. No conversation had, no letter or note, just gone. I find the shot of him looking at the Medal of Honor to be so devastating, because last night was quite the pivotal moment in their dynamic and relationship. Forrest asks for Jenny's hand in marriage, followed by a bit of a turbulent back and forth. They then go on to make love before really discussing if she accepts his offer, and then he wakes to her just being gone. And to top it all off, finds a sentimental gift that he gave her left on a stand. Forrest looks at her made bed, sits in silence in the living room, and sits on the porch, processing all that has happened and what this could mean for their relationship in general. I truly feel for Forrest in this moment, but let's go ahead and dive in on what just occurred. Now first, let me start here. We're on Earth to have a great time, right? We're here to connect with others, find fun hobbies we love, sing, dance, go to concerts, go out to eat. We're here for that. But as Mrs. Gump herself said, life is like a box of chocolates, and you just never know what you're gonna get. People like structure, routine, the feeling of safety and stability. But the thing about life that even I myself had to learn is that the only thing truly constant in this world is change. John Green, author of The Fault in Our Stars, has a great quote in his book stating that pain demands to be felt. And whether it's pain you experienced in childhood or from a traumatic life event, it's still back there. And we can try to tuck it away into a mental closet and only focus on the good in life. But until you look at that pain, face it, and learn how to heal from it, it's just going to keep creeping out of that closet. And that's going to result in it leaking into your present reality. Now, of course, we all have our own experiences of pain. We all have our own timing in which we deal with it. People go through some terrible things in this world. We all have our own timing. But here, we can see just how much Jenny is still weighed down by all that pain. Even in the way she just straight up tells Forrest,
"You don't want to marry me."
I also want to make a point of how I know that there's a pretty large group of people that have seen this film and have a disliking towards Jenny for how detached or cold she appears at times, just up and disappearing, and just sometimes seeming to brush Forrest off in a way. I personally believe two things can be true at once, because for one, I would be an absolute hypocrite if I sat up here and said I don't understand her at all. One thing I've discovered is that sometimes, and please hear me when I say sometimes, this does not fit for every situation. Sometimes, the thing you don't like about someone is really something you either don't like or don't want to look at within yourself. Because at the end of the day, everyone you meet can mirror something about you back to yourself. I'm not going to sit up here and bash her, because I know what it's like to walk this earth feeling broken and weighed down from carrying pain from childhood and other moments of life. However, as I stated earlier, it does not excuse Jenny's behavior, and it does not excuse how her pain is leaking into her present reality and hurting the ones that she loves the most. She's hurt and she's drowning in her past, but Forrest did not deserve that whatsoever. And for the people that are like, okay, well, why does she sleep with him then? Why'd she sleep with him if she don't want the relationship? Come on, y'all. Come on now. Come on. This is Feel Real Depth. We're gonna keep it real, okay? Anybody that has had consensual sex in a relationship or situationship knows that majority of the time, the sex is the easiest part. If both of y'all come into the situation wanting sex, like Forrest and Jenny did in that particular moment, that don't take too much thought. Like, come on now, let's be real here. That don't take too much to get in the bed. Anybody can do that. Anybody can get in the bed. But it's the tough, uncomfortable, relationship-strengthening conversations that really show you where people stand. And of course, the actions that follow after that. New Edition already said it. Everybody loves the sunny days, but can you stand the rain? And I don't think getting through this ever-changing world is about ignoring the pain and ugly and only focusing on the good and escapism. It's about being able to face that pain inside, face difficult moments, and learn how to handle them. And that comes with learning and knowing yourself, your true self. Not who the world told you had to be or made you believe you are. Forrest could have accepted all that bullying and people calling him stupid and dumb his whole life. He could have taken all that in, let it define him, and spent the rest of his life living in a way that wasn't fulfilling. But he had a mother that drilled affirmations into him, and he grew up believing that he could do whatever and be whoever he wanted to be. Jenny, unfortunately, didn't have that support. In fact, she had an experience that was quite sinister, and through that, time and time again, has found herself in situations that are unhealthy or just not fulfilling. I even find her leaving behind the Medal of Honor incredibly symbolic. Because deep down inside, she does not feel she's a person of honor. She's still letting what she's gone through define her, and she's not ready to reparent herself and grow from it. She probably doesn't even think that that's possible, and is just convinced that this is who she is, as so many people are. She doesn't feel deserving of true love and a happy and fulfilled life. Consequently, still creating her own hell and running from even the possibility of heaven. I've been here, I know people that have been here, and sometimes there just aren't enough rocks. Now I do want to mention this next sequence because it ties into exactly what's been going on. As Mrs. Gump told us, you never know what you're going to get. If you want to be your best, healthiest self, you have to look at and learn how to handle those tough moments. And I find it so miraculous how Forrest really has spent so much of his life taking Jenny's advice of running, but doing it with his intention. We all have tough moments, that's the balance of life, but it's up to us whether we drown in them or use them as fuel to elevate. And I'm not knocking Jenny for trying. If you don't get out into this world and learn and experience, how else will you know who you are? Forrest was once recognized as the local idiot with weird legs, and yet never allowed himself to drown in those projections or in the misery of those around him. And once again, Jenny was brought up in a more unfortunate situation and has spent a lot of her young adult years really just trying things out, and a lot of the times finding herself chasing distractions. I also really like how they highlight her hippie exploration. You know, nothing wrong with exploring the love and light of spirituality, but I myself had to learn, if you're not really digging into those raw and darker elements of spirituality, you're only going to get so far. Even witnessing her extreme escapism through hard, one of the furthest ways you can run from the pain inside your body. Keep in mind, this isn't judgment. We've all dealt with pain in ways we're not proud of at different points in our life. But it's just so compelling to see the distinction between how her and Forrest have dealt with things, all while still being under that same umbrella of just running. And I love how we come upon this yet again, after Jenny leaves Forrest, after that relationship-altering night. Whatever direction she chooses after this, that's her choice to make. We don't know. But to see Forrest just get up and start running around the country, inspiring others by just being himself, and spending so much time in nature, which is known as one of the best healers there is, that's so inspiring. He could have just sat in that house, depressed, questioning himself, spiraling, and we all need time to grieve, don't get me wrong, but it's crucial to not stay in that dark place and let yourself just wither away. To see him take all of that energy of heartbreak and confusion and transmute it into something even bigger than him, that's the work of God if I ever seen it. And we even catch the tiniest glimpse of Jenny working as a waitress and watching Forrest on TV. And well, after 3 years of running around the country, Forrest decides it's time to go back home to Alabama.
Quiet, he's gonna say something.
I'm pretty tired. Think I'll go home now.
Now what are we supposed to do?
And one day, receives a letter from Jenny wanting to reconnect. He tells the lady at the bus stop Jenny's address, and we find out, with all the running that Forrest is used to, he doesn't even need to wait for the bus. Jenny's apartment is 5 or 6 blocks down the street. Yes, it's hilarious that Forrest has been sitting at this bus stop for 2 hours when he could have been gotten to Jenny, but it's all in how you look at it. If you want to bring some magic into it like I love to do, we can recall a quote Mrs. Gump said way earlier in the film, that God is mysterious. And maybe God wanted Forrest to sit at that bus stop and touch people with his story. It's not that hard to believe. People are inspired by each other every day. But finally, the moment arrives. Forrest arrives at the apartment and is warmly greeted by Jenny, who immediately pulls him into a hug. She excuses the mess, stating that she just got off of work, and Forrest takes in the aroma of her home. He hands Jenny the chocolates, letting her know that he ate some, which is just hilarious. Like, bro, come on. Jenny excitedly shows him all of the newspaper clippings she cut out of him running across the country, but seems to be hesitating to say something. Forrest makes it pretty clear in his body language that he's not really here to look at pictures of himself. He's here to reconnect with his friend. Jenny closes the photo book and Forrest is laser focused as she struggles to find her wording. We are now seeing a different layer of Ginny as she initiates an apology to Forrest.
I want to apologize for anything that I ever did to you, because I was messed up for a long time, and
This apology, however, is abruptly halted as a lady appears at the front door with the little boy. Now let's just pause right here before we even get into the next segment. Ginny's energy here already feels lighter. Yes, she looks more mature, but it's not just that. There's a feeling in the air. Forrest hasn't even been there 5 minutes and she's already open to looking back on the past and taking accountability for it. We don't know exactly where she's been or what she's been doing, but the signs are there that she's been doing some kind of internal work. As stated earlier, everyone's got their own journey and timing, different ebbs and flows of life, but Ginny finally seems to have reached a much more grounded season of her life. So yes, a lady appears to be dropping off a little boy. I love that as he's getting dropped off, we slowly start to see drawings on the wall right over Forrest's shoulder, insinuating that this just might be Ginny's kid. As her friend quickly leaves, Ginny comes back over to Forrest and introduces the two to each other, not quite saying the child's name yet. They greet each other and the young boy then asks if he can go watch TV. Forrest watches the boy in absolute wonder, awed at the fact that his friend Ginny is a mother, and is shocked when she reveals that his name is Forrest.2, named after his father. Forrest's initial response is absolutely hysterical, being dumbfounded that the kid's father's name is Forrest.2, until Ginny just makes it plain and states that Forrest is in fact the father of her child.
his name's Forrest.
Like me.
I named him after his daddy.
He got a daddy named Forrest, too?
You're his daddy, Forrest.
He goes into a momentary shock, freezing up and saying nothing as he processes the overwhelming news. Ginny immediately reassures him that he did nothing wrong, asking, "Isn't he beautiful?" to help calm the situation.
Isn't he beautiful?
He's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen.
He then asks if the little boy is smart, wondering if he has challenges like Forrest himself. But Ginny says that he is one of the smartest in his class. Forrest is taking all this information in, and whilst from the look of it, trying not to collapse into a puddle of tears. He's once again at a loss for words as he motions over to the young boy, and Ginny quickly encourages him to go over and get to know him. Ginny watches on, looking emotional herself, as the two sit and watch Sesame Street, similar mannerisms already noticeable. This really does go for so much of the movie, but wow, what a heavy scene. But let's just cut to the chase here. It's truly a shame that this is how Forrest finds out he's a father. To have the experience of a pregnant partner witnessing the birth, feeding, burping, bathing, changing the diapers, first steps, first words. To have those experiences essentially robbed from you simply because you just didn't know is tragic. And honestly, I feel like if Forrest had responded in momentary anger or upset, it would have been absolutely valid. But as we've seen throughout this film, Forrest is an unconditionally loving human. He knows Ginny wasn't perfect, he knows she was still carrying a lot of pain, and he chose to love her through it all. Besides waitressing, we don't know exactly where Ginny has been, but she seems to have reached a certain level of emotional stability. Now, does that just excuse everything that has occurred? I don't think so. And who knows, as they come back into each other's lives, and he gets to know Forrest Jr., those upset moments may come when he realizes significant moments that he's missed. But at the end of the day, that's not up for me to decide. Even if we're all witnessing it, at the end of the day, the dynamic and relationship Forrest and Ginny have is theirs alone. And Forrest just seems to have this deep, unspoken understanding that it was never personal. Ginny wasn't maliciously hurting him, strategically playing him, at least that's what he believes. She was just a lost, hurt human being. And that answer is not going to be good enough for everyone, but that's what it is. And it's Forrest's personal choice to keep his heart open and forgive. He doesn't have to. It's not the mark of a good person if he does. It's just a choice. And Forrest chooses to forgive. The trio head to a park, giving little Forrest some time to play outside, while Forrest and Ginny catch up. As they're sitting on a bench watching him play, Ginny announces that she's sick. And no, not the cold kind of sick that Forrest asks about. The real bad kind. Jenny has a virus that is unknown and by default, incurable. Forrest immediately invites the two back to Alabama, stating that he'll take care of Jenny if she's sick. Her response is left field.
Would you marry me, Forrest?
Okay.
Now, I said her response came out of left field, but honestly there's some understanding to it. Jenny has revealed that she has an incurable sickness, meaning that to some degree, she has become aware that she has limited time. Less time than she would if she was healthy. And that's how this thing called life goes. Majority of us have no idea how or when we'll die. But when you become aware of how you're going to pass, and are given a timeline of when, surely it can shift the way you think and see the world, even if just a little. Jenny has clearly done some reflection, and has decided she wants to spend her last days at peace and with the two people she loves the most. And once again, we can play that whole, oh now she wants to bounce back, oh now she wants to... We can play that game, but at the end of the day, this is their connection and theirs alone. And Forrest decides that Jenny is still the woman he wants to marry. They return to Greenbow and host a beautiful, intimate wedding right on the family property. I must throw in that scene with Lieutenant Dan showing up is one of the most heartwarming scenes ever, quite frankly. Truly miraculous. But yes, Forrest and Jenny go on to have a beautiful wedding, enjoy slow, peaceful days as a family, and just enjoying every day as it comes, knowing that Jenny only has so much time left. One day, Forrest is bringing her tea, and it's clear that her time is near, because he pauses in the doorway, uncertain for a moment if she's even still breathing. But she slowly opens her eyes and greets him, and it feels very reminiscent to when his mother was close to passing. As he sits next to her, Jenny starts to ask about Vietnam, and if he was scared there, essentially asking about the fear of death. And I love how Forrest says yes, then I don't know, and then takes the conversation somewhere completely different. Instead of focusing on the fear of it all, he recollects on the wonder and beauty still available in those moments, and then just beautiful moments in his life in general. Like when it would stop raining in Vietnam and he would look up at the stars in the night sky in amazement, or being on his shrimp boat and watching the breathtaking sunsets, or the amazing views he saw while running across the country. Views so beautiful that he couldn't tell where heaven stopped and the earth began. Jenny responds,
I wish I could have been there with you.
You were.
death, fear, destruction, chaos, it's always around us. But so is joy, so is hope, so is beauty, so is wonder, so is love. It's all in how and where we're looking. The scene closes out with Jenny grabbing Forrest's hand,
I love you.
and before it's even over, we hear Forrest talking to Jenny, announcing that she died on a Saturday morning and was buried under their favorite tree from childhood. And remembering how much Jenny hated her childhood home, Forrest had it demolished in her honor. He recollects his mother telling him how death is a part of life, and how he wishes it wasn't. He lets Jenny know that little Forrest is doing okay, and that he's well taken care of. Forrest is teaching him how to take care of himself, and the two spend a lot of time bonding through fishing, reading, playing ping pong, etc. He states how little Forrest wrote her a letter, and he's going to respect his wishes by not reading it, placing it next to her headstone for Jenny and Jenny alone. Forrest is clearly and understandably having a hard time with her quick passing, crying and choking up throughout the entire monologue. He ends his speech stating that he's not really sure if he believes in destiny or if we're all just floating through life with free will. But what he does know is that he misses Jenny, and that if she needs anything, he is not far.
I miss you, Jenny. If there's anything you need, I won't be far away.
As he walks away, we see a group of birds fly off into the sky, and Forrest pauses to watch them. And that right there is the last we see of Forrest and Jenny in this film. It wraps with him sitting at the bus stop with little Forrest as he awaits going back to school. As little Forrest makes his way onto the bus, he tells him he loves him, getting the same response back.
Hey, Forrest. I want to tell you I love you.
I love you too, Daddy.
I'll be right here when you get back.
The bus drives away, and Forrest sits down at the stop as a similar white feather lies near his feet and then flies away. What can I say? I just love the story of Forrest and Jimmy. It is one of purity, innocence, childlike wonder, magic, love, pain, forgiveness, and whatever else you see fit. As I close out, I don't have much else to say because let's be real, I've said plenty. But this is a story that never gets old, and I really do hope you've enjoyed exploring it with me. I certainly enjoyed exploring it myself and found breaking down the characters to be quite therapeutic. If you've stuck around, I thank you and welcome you to share your thoughts below. Your thoughts on the characters, their dynamic, and even similarities you see in yourself. I definitely can see parts of myself in both of them. Well, I'm pretty much wrapped here. Please be sure to give the video a thumbs up if you enjoyed, subscribe if you like the way that I create and express myself, and thanks for watching. This has been Feel Real Depth. Thank you, namaste, and farewell. It just unmasks. He gives money to church, donates money for a local healthcare facility, and gives both. He gives money to church, donates money for a local healthcare facility, and gives Bubba's money. His family gives Bubba's. What the fuck? I can't. There's a quote coined by Henry Ford that money doesn't change men, it just unmasks them. Unmasks. It just unmasks them. Why is that so hard to say? Because for one, I would be an absolute hip. Can you go in the room? Can you go in the room? Can you go? Can you go in the room? Now does that just excuse everything that has occurred? The bus drives away and Forrest sits down at the tree stoop. Tree stoop? She was a lost, hurt human being. And that answers, she was a lost, hurt human being. And that being, she was a lost, hurt human. And farewell.